Summer is finally here, and that means absolutely beautiful weather for cruising your classic car or truck. Unfortunately, it also paves the way for things like vapor lock, which will absolutely ruin your summer if you give them half the chance. That's why in this video, I'm going to be showing you some super quick and simple fixes to cure or prevent vapor lock so that you can enjoy your summer while it lasts. So what is vapor lock? Well, put very simply, vapor lock is when the fuel in your fuel system is exposed to heat and begins to vaporize. It then creates a bubble or an air pocket in your fuel system. Now, our fuel systems were not meant to transport anything but liquid, so that bubble causes a restriction in your fuel line, either greatly reducing fuel flow or in more extreme cases, blocking it off completely. So now that we know what it is, how exactly do we fix it? So it's my opinion that you're a lot better off if you go ahead and try to prevent vapor lock than you are to wait and try to fix it once it starts, simply because the tools and materials we're going to talk about in this video, they're really not that expensive, and an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But if you're already experiencing vapor lock, don't stress about it. It's easy to fix. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Now, the first step is going to be to just give your car a good once over. You want to make sure that you separate your fuel lines as much as you possibly can from any heat sources. Now, that can mean things like headers, exhaust manifolds, downpipes, mufflers, and catalytic converters. It can also just mean your engine block. Basically, anything that can generate a significant amount of heat, you want to keep those fuel lines as far away from that as possible. Now, it's very likely that you're not going to be able to get enough separation everywhere through your whole fuel system. That is why I typically resort to using something like this. So what you're looking at is a special heat barrier made specifically for fuel lines and transmission lines and things like that. This stuff works pretty good. It comes in different varieties. You can get it in a stick-on. You can also get it that Velcros on, and I'm gonna just share with you, they both kind of stink in their own way. The Velcro doesn't really hold like it should. When you cut these pieces to length, the Velcro isn't lock stitched, so usually it will start to peel off over time, and the sticker, it is just a nightmare in so many ways to try to get that sticker to hold. I have had better luck with the Velcro than I have with the sticker, but they're both suboptimal at best. They do, however, do a good job of keeping that heat away from your lines, which is why I still use them. Just make sure to use some zip ties or something to hold them in place and keep them from unwrapping as you're going down the road. Now, obviously, these things do not look very good. They kind of kill the look in your engine bay. As far as I'm concerned, it's a cheaper solution and it doesn't really bother me. Now, if you couple these heat shields with something like a Phenolic carburetor spacer, you're looking at pretty much my standard setup. Now, if that doesn't really sound like something that you want to do to your car, and you want to go with something a little bit more, let's say, extreme, then this next method might be for you, and that is using a return style system. This is kind of the bazooka of fixes. It's gonna pretty much guarantee that you're gonna have a fix no matter what setup you're running. Any type of return style system is usually going to be your best bet to stop vapor lock and percolation. And this is for a couple of reasons. One reason is if you use an electric pump, you can jack up your fuel pressure before your carburetors and use a return style regulator, which pretty much eliminates your chances of vapor lock. See, that's why EFI does not suffer from vapor lock, because it operates at such a higher pressure than carburetors do. Another reason that return style system is going to help you so much is because that fuel is constantly being replaced with the cool fuel out of the tank. Therefore, it never really has time to get hot. Now, there's a reason I don't usually do this on my cars, and it's simply the fact that it's usually an expensive option. Now, there is a budget-friendly option with this. This is a special fuel filter that has an extra 1/4 inch outlet. See, if you couple this with a fuel pump that is rated for the pressures that your carburetor requires and a return line back into your fuel tank, you will have a very cost-effective return style system that keeps that fuel from being stagnant. Now, this is Wix part number 33040, and it features 5/16 inlet and outlet. Again, this isn't typically my go-to. I'm gonna start off by spacing my lines away from heat, getting that heat wrap, and dropping in a Phenolic spacer. That is usually plenty good for me. Using these methods, I've had excellent summer reliability. But there are other types of vapor lock, primarily what I call percolation. That is when the fuel inside your float walls begins to get hot and it boils, expands, and gets pushed out the venturi of your carburetor and down into your engine, flooding it. Picture this, you pull up to a store in your classic car on a nice hot summer day. You come out about 5 minutes later and the thing won't start. It just spins and spins. It's just not having it. That sounds familiar. It was probably percolation. Now we know what percolation is. Let's talk about how to fix it. Now, in my experience, it's a lot harder to fix percolation, but there are a few things that we can do to help. The trick with percolation, much like it is with vapor lock, is to isolate the carburetor from heat. Now, obviously, the carburetor has to be in a very specific location, so there's not as much you can do as there is with fuel lines. There are a few tricks, a few products I can show you that help. One of the best things you can do for percolation is these guys. Carburetor spacers. So if you buy the right type of carburetor spacer, it really helps isolate from heat. The trick is just don't buy an aluminum one. Aluminum transfers heat really well. Worst thing you can do is use an aluminum spacer in the summer. It just doesn't work very well. This one right here is Phenolic plastic, and it works really good. You can get them in many configurations, and they're not super expensive, so these are typically what I use. This is an old school heat isolator pad. This one right here is OEM Ford. This came off my '84 crew cab when I took it apart. These work very well. Also, I don't typically buy these, but I will try to find one and link it in the description. Now, another thing you can do for percolation is to make sure you have a stretch of rubber line in between the carburetor and the line coming up from your fuel pump. What this does is it just helps isolate heat just a little bit more. This isn't gonna make much difference, but every little bit helps, and it's so easy to do, I always do it. Now, another thing you can do, and I'll admit, it's kind of a band-aid on a bullet wound, and that's lowering the float level in your carburetor ever so slightly. You're not gonna make much difference here. It can help. I've had this save my butt a couple of times. Basically, it just gives that fuel a slight bit more room to expand. Generally speaking, it's more important to note that your float level is actually correct, because if it's too high, of course, you're gonna get far more fuel being pushed out. Float level is very important with a carburetor. There's a lot more to it than just this one aspect, but if you've exhausted everything else, this can work. It's worth trying. Now, there's another option you can use. It's definitely a very extreme option. I don't typically use it, but that is blocking the heat crossovers in your intake. These right here are heat crossovers. They allow exhaust to cross over the engine under the carburetor. They apply heat to the base of the intake to help with fuel atomization, and you can actually block these off completely or just restrict them to help reduce the temperature underneath your carburetor. Some intakes come with the crossovers already deleted. You can even get special gaskets with the crossover either completely blocked or restricted, or you can use shim stock like I did right here. These are restricted to 5/16 if you're wondering. I've also heard of people packing JB weld in them, steel wool, tin foil. There's so much stuff you can do if you're seriously considering trying this. My advice would be to look up whatever engine you have on Google. Just look and see what other people are doing and do something similar. That way you kind of know you're on the right track. As I said before, these crossovers do help with fuel atomization and economy, which is why I do not recommend blocking them off completely. Personally, I don't do that. I have restricted them a time or two with no noticeable negative results. Honestly, if you're not taking the intake off for another unrelated reason, I don't even think I'd bother. See, in some vehicles, this can be a complete game changer. In others, it's almost no difference. Some vehicles are far more prone to percolation than others, and it's my experience that sometimes it's easier to just learn to live with it. When you come out of a store or something and you know that your engine has had time to percolate, just go ahead, get in the car, mat the gas to the floor, crank it over. That should open the throttle blades and help lean out that flooded engine, and it should crank up. It makes you look a little silly revving on your engine in a parking lot, but you know, if it works, it works. That's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps YouTube know that this is a good video and push it out to other people who might find it useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.